Welcome to Functional Philosophy. I'm Charles Tew. That's T as in Tango, E as in Echo, and W as in Whiskey. This is episode number 34, and its title is Globalism, Nationalism, and Ayn Rand's Theory of Concepts. Hello everyone. Today I'm going to discuss another manifestation of the power of concepts. Another manifestation of the false dichotomy between the nominalist theory of concepts and the realist theory of concepts, and what the proper role of concepts is and how that relates to having a proper view of the nation state. So first, let's define globalism and nationalism. Globalism is the idea that nations are artificial, unreal, and should not be respected. In war, for instance, why should you privilege your own civilians over those of the alleged enemy? Who even is the enemy? It's just the people in power. It's just Saddam Hussein. It's not all of the people in Iraq. So why is it okay to have collateral damage in Iraq when you wouldn't in America? You wouldn't accept that. Why should we even have border controls? Why should we not let just anybody into the country? These lines, these divisions separating countries are just artificial. What's the difference between America and Canada? It's just an artificial line on the earth. There's no mountain range that the earth sprung up to separate the two. It's a purely human invention. It has no reality. This is the globalist view. Globalists include Marxists, international socialists, communists, libertarians. All of these people believe that nations, states are illegitimate constructs, arbitrary, subjective. And they serve no purpose other than to facilitate tribalism. Now, what is globalism opposed to? Nationalism. Nationalism is the view that states should exist, and fundamentally it is the view that they are real. They are in fact more real than the individuals who make them up. The nationalist view is that the state is a transcendent entity. The standard of value for the state and for all of the people in the state should be the state's existence and success, whatever that means. So the nationalist view is that states should exist and that they are what matter most, not individuals, not the people of the states. So in the globalist view, there are only individual human beings, and grouping them together is just arbitrary. In the nationalist view, there are only groups, and treating individuals as individuals is unreal and a mistake. So it's states shouldn't exist, only individuals are real, versus states should exist and individuals divorced from the state or the group or the tribe, the nation, are unreal. Okay, now there is a clear parallel here to Ayn Rand's theory of concepts. This is the problem in epistemology, which is the central, or rather the core, the most important, complex part of philosophy. And philosophy is the foundation of everything. So this is like the core of the core of the core. Since the Greeks began looking for the one in the many, there has been this problem, the so-called problem of universals. What does a concept name? You have the concept man, and yet there are only individual men. So what's the deal with this concept? That's really what epistemology boils down to. There are other issues in epistemology. There's conceptual identification, which is just another name for the theory of propositions. There's deduction, induction, the two forms of logic, but all of it depends on concept formation. Concept formation is the foundation of everything else in epistemology. That's why Ayn Rand did it first. It had to be worked out before everything else could be. So it's not the only issue in epistemology, but it is the foundational issue. And it's the one mankind struggled with for thousands of years until Ayn Rand solved it. Now, what Ayn Rand realized was that a concept is a human way of categorizing things in the world. It does not exist independent of the things in the world. I mean, it exists as a mental unit, but the mental unit refers to things in the world, not to anything else, not to a Platonic form. There is no such thing as manness. It's not referring to another entity, it's referring to things in the world based on shared similarities, based on the fact that these things fall within a certain range of measurements, the isolation of which is relevant to human life. Now, the two theories of concepts that have existed throughout history, and in terms of which people still think, even if they don't realize it, are nominalism and realism. Nominalism is the view that concepts are just subjective. They're just arbitrary categories. We could group things however we want. Things are just things, so categorizing them in certain ways, that's just a name we put on things. There's no standard of categorization. We just do it for convenience or subjectivity because we feel like it. There's no standard for it. There's no objective standard for conceptualizing things. There's no reason to put all men together versus men and pineapples together. We just do that just because we feel like it. The other view is the realist theory. This is the Platonic view. This is that, no, there is a reason to put things together. But it's not on the basis of the things, which it's true, are all irreducibly different. No horse has exactly the same characteristics as another horse. So there are no two things that are exactly the same, but concepts are still valid because they don't refer fundamentally to things, they refer to something else in another dimension. They refer to Platonic forms. Now, globalism is political nominalism, and nationalism is political realism. Individuals are the analog to the reference of concepts here. And the state is the analog of the concept. So in the nominalist view, concepts are artificial, it's only the reference, it's only the things in the world that are real, and concepts are just arbitrary. On the realist view, it's the concepts that are real, it's some super-dimensional thing that's real. Not all of the individual things we see that we include in the concept. It's the concept itself has reality over the things. In the objectivist view, the reference are what's real, all of the individual things in reality, but they are grouped together on the basis of objective similarities and differences from other things. So globalism here is the idea that individuals, the parallel to all of the individual things in the world, those are all there is. And grouping them together in a state, just like grouping individual things in reality into a concept, is arbitrary, artificial, irrational. It's just a power play in some cases, just a way of saying my false way of looking at the world is better than yours. It's just a power game, or just emotional. It serves no real purpose. It's convenience-based, whatever. We shouldn't respect those distinctions too much. So just like concepts are just names, states are just artificial boundaries. Now the nationalist view says, oh no, these boundaries are real, because the people within them form a transcendent being. They form an organism greater than themselves. Now, this is an exact parallel to the idea that all of the reference of a concept, all of the individual men, for instance, that the concept man refers to, those are just illusory shards of a truer, realer, higher, transcendent, immaterial entity called man. And this is what the concept man refers to. That's the realist theory. And that's exactly what nationalists believe in the political realm. That a nation does not simply group together individuals. The nation is itself a higher form of existence, in just the same way that a concept does not merely group together the things you see in the real world. It refers to something that transcends all of those things. Now, the objectivist view is that states are necessary, so people do need to be grouped together into political units, and they should care about their own political units against other political units, but it is a grouping of individuals. So it's categorization, but it's a categorization of individuals. It's a grouping, but a grouping of individuals. Just as the concept does not metaphysically supersede its reference in Ayn Rand's theory of concepts, so the state, the nation, does not supersede the individuals who make it up in politics. It's important to have a state in order to objectify the rule of law and the retaliatory use of force, but the state should not become something beyond the individuals who make it up, because it isn't anything beyond the individuals who make it up. And treating it that way is just as mystical and supernatural as Plato's idea regarding universals was. So this is just another example of how everything comes down to philosophy. If you understand philosophy, you can cut right to the center. You can see exactly what's wrong with what somebody's saying, just like that. And that's really the power of philosophy, the power of thinking in principles. It allows you to, you become like a supercomputer compared to other people. It's amazing. I remember how it was before I learned Objectivism. I was just floating around, and I remember what it's like to live in this case-by-case way, in this disintegrated way. You have no idea what you're doing. Everything is just this, tallying up, and you're putting one stack against another stack, and you have no integrated way of thinking. You don't have any principles. You don't have any general truths. Everything just confronts you as this standalone thing, and you have no idea how to deal with it. Well, that's what philosophy allows you to do. It allows you to deal with things by integrating them, by seeing the through lines. And the through line in the relatively recent globalist versus nationalist clash is concepts. This is just another manifestation of the battle over concepts. This is just nominalism versus realism in modern politics. And both sides are just as wrong as they have always been. The bottom line is, just as concepts are valid and necessary, but only as integrations of the individual things that exist in the real world, so states are valid and necessary, but only as groupings of individuals who are the primary units of existence. The state exists for them, not the other way around, just as a concept exists to organize the things that really exist. The things that really exist don't exist to form together and create an immaterial spirit that is the concept. So it's exactly the opposite of what JFK said. Do not think about what you can do for your country. Think about, what am I getting out of this deal? What does the country do for me as an individual? That's the nature of the state. You do have to group people together. People have to get together. Otherwise, you have anarchism, which is just beyond stupid. It's actually an incoherent idea, and I think anybody who is an anarchist is a moron. So that should make me a bunch of friends. If you have any questions, you can just send me an email at charles.a.2@gmail.com. You can also visit my website at charlestew.com. There you can find information on and links to all my work, including ways to support it. If you'd like to kick me a few bucks on Patreon, I will be very grateful. In any case, thanks for listening. Let's meet again in episode 35.